Okay, can everyone see me okay? Just a second. Just a moment. Okay. Oy, I think there's the light here is a little too... Okay, here we go. Okay. Shavua Tov, everyone. We are Parashat BO. Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, we are looking... What?
I was just going to point out, last time when I listened to the last few minutes, it sounded like we were picking up what people were saying in this room as well as you. And I'm not sure whether that means you don't have to repeat the questions, but does anyone else?
No, it actually was from the beginning.
Yeah, so it's amazing. I don't know why, but we could hear the people asking the questions as well as the answers.
Meaning what? Meaning when you watched it last week online, afterwards you were able to hear people's questions?
Correct.
Okay.
Which would make it a lot easier for the rabbi not to have to repeat the questions.
And it will make Alex's life a lot easier too.
Maybe because you were without headphones.
Yes.
Probably because I was...
Is that loud for everybody sleeping at this hour?
No, I was using the headphones just because I thought you'd be able to hear me better. But if there's no need for it, and people can hear me okay, then we won't use the headphones.
It just makes it a much more better listening experience after the fact as well.
Okay. So I will not be repeating the questions. Okay. So we are looking at the Psukim on chapter 12, starting from verse 20. So first, let's give let's wait for if someone could please find the page and announce it.
Bo.
Parashat BO. We're in Sefer Shemot.
12.
Chapter 12, verse 20.
Verse 20. So that's page 354.
Page 354 in the art scroll. And I will open it up as well. Just a moment. Everyone have it?
The English is you should not eat any leavening.
How does it begin?
You should not eat any leavening. In all your dwellings you shall eat matzahs.
No.
Is that what you want us?
Wait,
Am I in the wrong place?
Continue. You're in chapter 12?
Chapter 12, verse 20.
Just give me a moment, okay? Sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe I copied this down wrong. We are looking... Just one moment. We are looking for when Hashem gives Moshe, when they're given the commandment of doing the... Just a second.
Is it 21? Moshe called all the elders of Israel and said, "Go forth."
Just a second.
It's for the Pesach offering.
12. Okay, so we're actually looking at chapter 12, verse 21. My apologies. I was off by one verse. Okay, chapter 21. So just the following verse. Okay?
Pesach offering, yes?
Yeah, the following verse. Okay? So I'm going to read from my translation, and here we go. We're going to read the 3 or 4 verses, and as usual, we're going to ask some questions. So this is after this is at the very end of the 10 makot, the 10 plagues, and they're now being commanded to do for the first time ever, to observe the mitzvah of doing the Passover sacrifice. And it says the following: Moshe summoned all the elders and said to them, draw forth. I don't know how it's translated by you, but I'm going to translate it in the most literal way, because as we've seen, Midrash is many times based on understanding the words as they appear, even if it doesn't fit in with the context. So, draw forth. Just a second. Draw forth and take for yourselves. How does Ayat Scroll translate it?
It says or buy for yourself.
Okay, so no, it's not also buy. Okay, literally it would be draw forth and take for yourselves sheep for your families and slaughter the Passover sacrifice. And you shall take.
Translation says or.
Right. So
right.
Literally.
And.
Okay, let's continue. Verse 22. And you shall take a bunch of hyssop. I don't know if that's pronounced hyssop, and immerse it in the blood that is in the basin, and you shall extend it to the lintel, that is the beam that is at the top of the door, and to the two doorposts the blood that is in the basin, and you shall not go out, any man, from the entrance of his house until morning. Hashem will pass to smite the Egyptians, and he will see the blood on the lintel and on the two doorposts, and Hashem will pass over the entrance, and he will not permit the destroyer to enter your houses to smite you. Okay, questions? And allow yourselves to be a little, be daring. Let's look at the verses and what is problematic or disturbing about these verses, about this entire description of what the Jews are supposed to do right before they leave Egypt.
Why does Hashem or the angel of Hashem need a sign?
Okay.
To know who's in the house.
Okay, good. So why does he need a sign? Doesn't the angel, this destroyer, whatever this destroyer is, doesn't he know where the Jews are living? He needs a name on the door saying, here lives Mr. and Mrs. Jew. Okay, think the same type of question, but much more disturbing. Yes, someone had a question over there in the back.
He said only to the elders of Israel.
Okay.
Not to the.
So he's only telling the elders. So where do we see that that also the rest of the Jews were told? Okay. Anything else?
Does God need this kind of signs?
Okay. So you're saying, from the verse it seems like the angel needs the sign. So you're saying what God needs the sign if they didn't smear the blood of the animal on the doorpost, God wouldn't know that a Jew lives there and needs to be protected. Okay. More in that same direction, but more. Be a little more heretical.
I mean, can the Jews only be safe in their houses? Like, why are they not permitted to leave? Okay, why are they not permitted to leave? If the Jew is supposed to be protected, why wouldn't he be protected everywhere? By the way, like we see in other plagues, whether the Jew is in their house or outside the house, they'd be protected. Why is it different over here? Okay, I'm looking for a more heretical question. Yeah.
For instance, is this related to the word Pasach? Is all the entire story around using the word Pasach and Pesach and so on? Okay. How is the word Pesach?
What? I'm sorry?
How is the word Pesach central? Yeah.
The word Pesach is central. Okay. What is its role? Okay. Yes.
I think he wanted to save just Jews that believe in God.
Okay, so you're offering an answer. You're saying there was a requirement from the Jews to do some kind of act of faith, an act of devotion. You can't just be saved just because you exist. You need to do something to merit the salvation. Okay, definitely a classic and excellent. I absolutely agree with that. I think it's an excellent answer. That salvation and even redemption from Hashem, even when it is mostly done by God still requires human participation. I agree, but I'm still looking for much more disturbing questions. Yes.
It's written mashkula.
I'm sorry, you're getting cut off. I think we're having a problem with the connection, Alex.
We know it's a lot of Jews in Mitzvah, and it's flock. It's not just one animal. It's a bunch.
I'm sorry. You got? Can you guys hear me? Okay.
We can hear you now. What about you?
Okay. For about 15 seconds, I couldn't really hear you. So can you repeat the question?
Hear now?
Yeah. Now it's okay.
God tells to Moshe tells to elders of Israel, take flock. It's one animal. It's
I think we need to disconnect and connect again, Alex.
The same thing. Where is it?
Let's try it.
For those of you who are watching live or the recording afterwards, I apologize. We're having some technical difficulties.
Moshe has to say to elders of Israel, take yourself home. So it's not just one animal. It's a lot of animals, and you have to take them from where you have to take them.
Okay. Okay, so you're asking, where are they taking all these animals from? If every single Jewish family is supposed to take a sheep or take a say, where are they supposed to take them all from? Okay, when I say I'm looking for a heretical question, I'm saying if you were reading this text for the first time and you're thinking of try to picture what it is the Jews are being told to do. Yes, Oleg.
I have the feeling that
Wait,
there are...
Oleg, go ahead.
Why is it saying, Be'avar Hashem lingof et Mitzrayim, and then there is a mashchit?
Okay. Okay, excellent question, which the Midrash talks about a lot, which we're not going to talk about, but the Midrash does. Who is it that is killing the firstborn? Is it Hashem himself? Is it an angel, a messenger of Hashem? There's something that there seems to be very conflicting records of this, both in the Psukim themselves as well in the Midrash. Oleg, yes.
One just note, I guess. From the way I remember always or thought of this what happened, it was just one mark on the door. It says, but it says on the top side of the door, on each side of the door, so it's like a pentagram.
Okay. So therefore,
and
so he's saying it's like a pentagram.
And then again, yeah, and then also the fact that it's done in blood. So this is, we're talking about that very.
Come on, say it. Say it. Say it.
That just seems like Ichi like just made up magical kind of things. And why are we doing all this?
Right. Okay. There we go. There you go. That's the question I was waiting for. This seems. I was actually looking for the word pagan. It seems almost pagan what they're being told to do.
Correct.
I mean, you think about it. They're being told to slaughter an animal and to draw pictures, or it's not even pictures, symbols with the blood on the doorpost. It seems so not just ritualistic. It is ritualistic, but ritualistic in in a very, again, for lack of a better word, a very pagan type of ritual, and with very almost pagan imagery of God stopping at the door and seeing seeing the door painted with a diagram of some kind of blood, and therefore not being able to harm. Paul, you said heebie-jeebie. Yeah, it seems very like kind of almost like dark magic. Kind of like voodoo. That's the imagery. Now, why is this so difficult? Why I think this is so difficult? Because it doesn't sit so well with us, something which, has a pagan imagery, but especially since the Jewish people are being taken out of Egypt here, and we assume that the Exodus is not just about a physical redemption, but also to distance them in some degree from pagan rituals and the type of pagan world that they were living in Egypt and were exposed to and influenced by Egypt. So why would they be told to do something which resembles pagan practice so much? Especially the imagery of the blood is really so disturbing. Yes.
Actually, what happened? It tells people to take their gods and slaughter them.
Wait.
This is what happened.
Wait, even if we're going to get to that Midrash, you're referring to the Midrash that says that the Jews were required to slaughter the god of the Egyptians. So we will see them. We will see that Midrash. Okay, we will see that Midrash. But even if we, at least at this stage, we take that concept that you're saying, which is the Jews are being told to take the deity that the Egyptians believe in and slaughter it, and that is a powerful thing. Even so, why do they need to smear the blood on the doorpost? And even without that, what is the point? To show that here we are, our God is stronger than your God. Isn't that falling into the same exact trap? That there are different that there are different gods, and and the battle amongst themselves, and our God is stronger than your God. My nuclear button is bigger than yours. Like, is that what we're trying to win? Are we trying to win by points? Plus the imagery of the blood, and by the way, it's not just the imagery of the blood, because it says you shall take a bunch of hyssop, so you have to take a specific branch. This seems like witchcraft. You have to take a very specific herb and mix it with the blood and smear the blood on the doorpost, so the angel of death will not be able to enter through the diagram of blood on the door. I read it and it is extremely disturbing to me to think. I'm thinking to myself, what are the Jews of Egypt thinking when they're told to do this? Are they thinking, oh, there's something completely different here, or yeah, it's all the same. They have their heebie-jeebie, we have our heebie-jeebie. That's what disturbs me about these psukim, about these verses.
Rabbi, is it fair to say that this is just a more extreme version of what we've seen throughout the place? I mean, taking a staff, turning it into a snake. I mean, a lot of that was kind of magical too. Even the magicians of Egypt could reperform it.
So wait, Paul.
This is more extreme.
Paul, are you asking a question? Or are you asking, or are you answering?
I'm sort of saying that maybe that's what the Jewish people were able to take, because that's what they knew.
Okay, very plausible answer, which we definitely see used by at least some commentators in other areas. Meaning, you're saying that maybe that's what they were familiar with, and therefore God needed to use something which is familiar with them, a religious practice, a religious belief, or he had to use something which is familiar to them, and therefore the kind of like hocus pocus style of faith and belief and religion, that's all that they were familiar with because of the times and the culture that they were living in, and therefore that's Hashem continued using that type of imagery, that type of religious leadership or example for them. Very solid answer. Very solid answer, which we see, that those who say that about much more fundamental things. So definitely possible. Okay, let's jump into the Midrash and attempt. I'm not even sure that the Midrash is answering the question as I brought forth, but I was trying to find an answer to this question. I think the Midrash might be talking about it. We will try. Okay, we're starting at the top, and the Midrash says the following: "And the Lord will pass over the opening. At that time, as if it were possible, he himself," he referring to who? Hashem, himself stood at the opening, "but rather, as it is the custom of the world, in the same way as when a butcher brings in his sheep, and he takes red dye and marks each lamb and sheep that he wants to slaughter, in order to recognize which one to slaughter and which one not to slaughter, so too, and he will see the blood. As if it were possible, he stood at the entrance and pushed away the destroyer, that he should not strike Israel. God said to them, and you shall keep this thing as a statute for you and your children forever. In the same way as I did this for you today, so too will I do it for you in the future to come, as it is stated in the book of Malachi, the very last prophet, as behold, the day is coming burning like a furnace, but with you I will have pity upon you, as a father has pity on his son." Let's disregard the last few lines for a moment, because they would confuse us if we try to go into them. This Midrash, is it answering our question? Our question was, what is the purpose? One of our questions was, why does the blood need to be out there? And our second question was, why does God need? What does the angel? What does God need the blood on the doorpost? Does the Midrash answer the question?
I don't think so. I think it just describes what's going to happen in more detail, but it doesn't say why.
Anyone want to offer a different answer? Does the Midrash, anyone want to try to explain how the Midrash answering the question, why does the blood need to be on the doorpost?
Oh, it just explains how the butcher work.
It says, just like a butcher needs to mark the sheep designated for slaughter in order not to get confused, in the same way, God needs to see the blood in order to know where he needs to block the destroyer from coming into.
I'm suggesting that Hashem's not a butcher and shouldn't really need that, so I still don't understand how it helps.
So wait, you're going to the next stage, right? We always first come in and ask ourselves, is the Midrash answering the question? What is the answer? And then the next stage is, what is the difficulty with the answer? And the difficulty with the answer, which you pointed out very well, the difficulty of the answer is what forces us to take another look at the Midrash, or to look deeper into what the Midrash is trying to do. So we understand what the Midrash is saying. It's answering the question, but it's answering it in a way that makes it even more difficult, because it's telling us that God is just like a human who gets confused. A butcher who has a lot of sheep, and some are for slaughter and some are for not. If he doesn't mark the ones for slaughter, he'll get mixed up. And it's saying, just like a human being gets mixed up with their sheep, God also would get mixed up. He wouldn't know where to stop the angel of death from coming into. Now, our other question, our more fundamental question, does this Midrash answer it, or does it make it even bigger?
I think Midrash is hinting to something, and he is hinting that we have that Jews, they were like Egyptians, and it was no difference between them. Wait.
Where do you see any reference in the Midrash to Egypt? We have to be careful.
I don't see it. But,
What?
It's just the part that he explains
But it doesn't say anything about Egypt. It says a butcher. Doesn't say. We have to be careful. Although we do try to kind of get to something bigger, we have to be, we are reading extra things into the Midrash. We have to try as best as we can. I don't see any reference to Egypt. Yes.
But this has a new dimension here. The dimension of the future. Everything this has to occur because the people of Israel should be able to repeat that in the future.
Okay. So we will touch upon that. We will touch upon that, yes.
So it's interesting that it says mark houses, not people. So in a sense, it offers a possibility of an opportunity for salvation. For then any Jew can offer to save Egyptian life if they say, this is what's going to happen. If you stay in my house, then you will live. But if you're not, then you will be slaughtered.
Interesting. You're saying you have a difficulty. You're pointing out a difficulty, or something which is unequal or dissimilar. The analogy that is given doesn't fit with what's actually happening, because if it were really similar to the sheep, and it's not the house that should be. That the blood should be, it's not the house that should be marked with blood, it's the individuals, it's the people, it's the firstborn. Of the Jewish firstborn should be the ones who are marked with blood, or the Jews sitting inside the house should be marked with blood.
Then the firstborns of Egypt were slaughtered, and there was no need for any markings on the doorpost for that.
Right, so he's saying this, so it's a very interesting point. It's a very interesting point. That it should be the individuals. Okay, interesting point. I was actually thinking of another thing which doesn't make sense, where it's unequal, because it's very subtle. In the mashal, in the analogy, who is getting marked with blood? The sheep that is going to be slaughtered. And in the analogy, and in reality, the Jews are marking the houses with blood, and those are the places that are not going to get slaughtered. You see what I mean? There's something wrong with the analogy. Meaning, based on the I'm saying based on the analogy, it should have been, the mitzvah on the Jews should have been to go and mark the Egyptian houses with blood, right?
Right.
Something in
that would be the more clear analogy.
Something it's all about proportions.
What?
It's all about proportions. If there are 10 Jewish houses and 1,000 Egyptian houses, it's easier to mark and that to be spared than 1,000 that to be destroyed.
Could be.
It's all about proportions.
Could be. He's saying okay. Could be. It's about proportions. It's easier to mark the few. Right. Okay. Yes. Last comment, and then last comment. Then we have to go forward, because at this point, all we've done, we've read a Midrash which hasn't really settled our question. It's almost made it worse, because instead of the Midrash reducing our difficulty of the imagery, it made it worse. It turned God into someone who is almost forgetful, or does not have the ability to protect us without our action, and does not have the ability to hold back the angel of death. The imagery here in this Midrash is even more difficult than appeared in the verses themselves. So we have an answer to the smaller question that we presented, but our bigger question has become even more difficult. The Midrash has made it worse. Yes, last comment, and then we'll continue. Yes.
The only thing I wanted to say, is... did you want to ask?
Yes, I want to.
Okay, please go ahead. Sorry.
God operated some, it's a killing robot. He gave him command, probably it's last command, and then he marked houses this robot knows it not to enter this house.
But the Midrash doesn't say in order for the robot or for the angel not to know where not to go in. The Midrash says Hashem himself is going to stand there to keep out the angel of death. And if it weren't for the Jews marking the doors, God would not know where to stand in order to rebuff the angel. So that makes that question even worse. Paul, yes, you wanted to say something?
So the only thing I wanted to say was it says the destroyer, so he should not strike Israel. So I don't know whether non-Jews within the houses would be protected.
Right. So that's the point. That's the point that Oleg was trying to make, which is theoretically based on what we see. So based on what we see here, it sounds like if Jews wanted to, they could have saved the Egyptians. Maybe based on what we see.
God's plan.
Basically, based on this midrash, it seems like that might be possible. Okay. We are now jumping to the third paragraph on the page. And you shall take a bunch of hyssop. Oh, no, by the way, is that the way it's pronounced? Hyssop? Hyssop? Anyone know?
Yeah, hyssop.
Hyssop. Okay. So hyssop is considered to be is used many times throughout Tanakh as an example of kind of like the lowest kind of shrub, like a very a lot of times it's brought in as a negation to like a cedar. We'll see it soon. If you look at the in the middle of the paragraph, you'd see a quote from Melachim. It's said by Solomon, and so too is said by Shlomo. He discoursed about trees from the cedar in Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of the wall. So hyssop is considered to be like the lowliest, tree. It's the like almost like moss that grows like on walls, out of from humidity or from whatever. It's considered to be a very lowly plant. Okay.
Plant from they made beer from this?
What?
Not hops.
Don't they no?
That's hops.
No, I don't. Okay. So let's read what the Midrash says. Remember, and again, what we're struggling here is the imagery of taking a specific, almost like a recipe, almost like a witchcraft recipe. Take a very specific, weed or shrub, and mix it in blood and smear the blood. It's a very, very descriptive and okay. Says the Midrash. There are things that seem lowly, and Hashem commanded that several mitzvot should be done from them. The hyssop seems to a person that is nothing, and its power is great before Hashem, that he resembles it to cedar in several places, in the purification of one who has tsarat, in the burning of the red heifer, and in Egypt he commanded to do a mitzvah with hyssop, as it says, and you shall take a bunch of hyssop. And so too is said by Solomon, by Shlomo. He discoursed about trees from the cedar in Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of the wall, to teach you that the small and the great are equal before the Holy One, blessed be He. And with small things he performs miracles, and with hyssop, the lowliest of trees, he redeemed Israel. Okay. So, first of all, I hope you all agree, a beautiful midrash. I think it's just simple and beautiful. How does the midrash explain why were they told to take this specific shrub? Why were they told Why were they told to take this lowly shrub? Why? Someone want to take a shot at explaining the midrash? Yes?
Because Hashem told them to.
No, the Midrash is not saying because Hashem told them to. There's a very specific reason why he told them to take this plant. Let's read it again. There are things that seem lowly, and Hashem commanded that several mitzvot should be done from them. The hyssop seems to a person that it is nothing, but its power is great before Hashem, that he resembles it to cedar in several places, in the purification of one who has tsarat, and in the burning of the red heifer, and in Egypt he commanded to do a mitzvah with hyssop, to teach you that the small and the great are equal before the Holy One, blessed be He. And with small things He performs miracles, and with hyssop, the lowliest of trees, He redeemed Israel. Why is Hashem telling the Jewish people, as they are about to leave Egypt and about to be redeemed from slavery to redemption, to salvation, to freedom, to use as a vehicle, as a tool for their salvation, to use the lowliest plant?
Because we are also the lowliest, maybe the lowliest of the nation.
That's how we think we are.
Right.
It's a metaphor.
Right.
Metaphor.
Obviously, it's a metaphor. Yes, it's a metaphor. It's a symbol. And if we, and the idea here is quite obvious, something that we are to take. You would think, okay, with what type of plant should we create should we perform a great miracle? A big tree, a powerful tree, a strong tree. A strong tree can do something. An impressive tree can do an impressive miracle, and says the Midrash, quite the opposite. Davka, take the lowliest, and it's interesting. It doesn't just say over here. It says, look, there are two other places where there's a mitzvah that it needs to be done specifically with the hyssop. And what are those mitzvot? One is the purification of someone who has tsarat. What is the situation of someone who has tsarat? What situation is that person in? Someone who has tsarat is tameh. He is impure. He is ostracized. He is alone. He is lowly. He's considered to be, he's considered to be, from a halachic perspective, a similar status as a dead person. And what is the other mitzvah that in which we use ezov with a red heifer? What is the red heifer used for?
Purify as well.
Purify who? Purify what? Who? The red heifer is meant, its purpose,
contact with dead.
Someone who is tamem met, someone who is on the highest level or the most severe level of impurity, someone who has come into contact with death, direct contact with death, and is considered to be has the status of a tamem met, impurity of. So you have someone who has tsarat, and one of the components of undoing that person's status and bringing him back to the world of the living and to of full life and part of society is taking this lowliest plant. And the same thing with the red heifer. Now it's beautiful what this Midrash did. If the verses themselves seemed like it's treating like witchcraft, which is using things from nature in a way that doesn't make any sense, things that have almost like black magic, that have no logic to them, have no reasoning to them, are just like an attempt to kind of like, to operate the buttons of the spiritual, realm. Over here, the Midrash is showing us exactly the opposite. It says, no, this is not some random plant that you do, you just, swish and flick, and suddenly it does some kind of illogical, ununderstandable, incomprehensible action that has no meaning. No, quite the opposite. The Midrash comes and says, let's think a second. A hyssop, let's see. Where else? And Oleg, by the way, this is an answer to your question from last week. From if we come and we try to see to try to stay true, or to see how does the Midrash get to what it gets to, and to try to what degree is the Midrash actually explaining the verses, or giving a kind of like truthful explanation versus how much is it an invention. And what the Midrash here has done says, let's think, where else have we met a hyssop? Well, we've seen that a hyssop needs to be used in two other places. And what do those two things have in common? People who are dead, or people who have been come into contact with death, people who are removed from life. And also over here, you have a nation who has been suffering, a nation who is about to be born as a nation. And there's a process going on here of the nation waking up, doing an action, doing something, and suddenly the Midrash comes and says there's a commonality here, showing that the lowliest thing and who is the lowliest here? We are. The Mitzvah is in a very, very low point. The person that's come into contact with death is halachically impure and removed from life, and he's not allowed to be next to touch other people, or he's restricted from performing certain acts, from going to certain places, for getting close to the temple, and from certain foods, and he's removed from life. And suddenly, what initially looks like it is inexplicable, and as we said before, like black dark magic or something heebie-jeebie and pagan, becomes something which has a beautiful symbolic meaning to it, which, according to the way the Midrash presents it, is meant to make us understand something, to reflect on it. Okay, that was a long monologue. Any comments, questions, disputes? Yes, please.
I mean, the only question I have is, from our perspective, that reads quite beautifully. From the Israelites, they wouldn't have known about these other uses of hyssop, so they'd have to be able to draw them.
Excellent point. So we understood what the Midrash is saying, and now we come and say, okay, but what doesn't make sense about this perush? It's like the Israelites at the time would have no idea that in the future there's going to be a mitzvah called the red heifer that's going to involve hyssop, and that in the future there's going to be a mitzvah commandment of the mitzvah that's going to involve a hyssop. So this message, this supposedly beautiful message that the Midrash claims is inside this action, is completely lost on them. So it's a beautiful idea, but it only makes sense to us after the fact. But at the time, if this is supposed to serve as a message to them, it would be completely lost. Okay, great question. Any other comments or problems or answers? Okay, let's continue. What?
Sorry. Just wanted to say, point out that, yeah, so at that time they wouldn't know the meaning, and for them that would not feel any different from any pagan practices. Because although we don't really know the stories that the Egyptians were telling about their gods and how and whatnot, every pagan god would have a collection of stories about them, and the meanings, and who they are and what they do and how they work, and etc. etc. So it's almost the same, but in one little aspect of it. So as you pointed out, if you were worshiping a pagan god, you would want to sacrifice something, the best that you have, usually. To show your devotion, you take the best of the best and you use it for the sacrifice. Here, you start the process of undoing, saying, well, and now you let's assume you're still in that practice, you cannot deviate because your minds are set, but here's something like a little twist for you. You're not going to use the best of the best for this process. You're just going to take the lowest, and this is how it's different.
Okay, that's I think I love it. I didn't think that it's great. So what Oleg is saying, in case it doesn't actually go through to the recording, is that traditionally the type of the way in which gods in the pagan world were worshipped is usually using the best, using the highest quality materials, the highest quality foods, and therefore when they're coming to do something, even though in some aspects it seems similar, but the fact that they're being told to take the lowest kind of creates this twist that, okay, even though it looks like it's similar, it's actually completely different. And the fact that, as the Midrash says, look, that the great and the small are equal before God, it really doesn't make a difference to God. If you use, this quality or this quality, to God it doesn't make a difference, but for you it will make a difference. So you need to understand this isn't about, okay, I love it, and that's the direction we're going to go to as we continue. Let's continue. We're looking at the last paragraph on the page, because this Midrash that we just read just explains the attitude towards the hyssop. But really, the part we really have difficulty with is the blood. That's where the imagery really gets disturbing. Says the Midrash, what did the Holy One, blessed be He, see to protect them with blood? By the way, I like the phrasing of the question. Meaning whoever's asking this question is asking, it's like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. This goes again, like, protect them with blood? It just sounds so. So answers the Midrash, in order to remember for them the blood of the Brit Milah of Avraham. And with 2 bloods Israel were saved from Egypt. The blood of the Passover sacrifice and the blood of the Milah. For it says, and I say to you, in your blood you shall live, and I say to you, in your blood you shall live. The blood of Passover and in the blood of Milah. Now look how the Midrash continues. To the lintel, right? Because they have to put the blood on the lintel is the beam that goes at the top, right? The mashkof, the beam that goes at the top of the door. Okay, they got the doorposts and the lintel, right? So they're supposed to put the lintel on the blood on the lintel in Avram's merit. The lintel resembles or symbolizes Avram, and the 2 doorposts in the merit of Yitzchak and Yaakov, and in their merit he saw the blood and did not permit the destroyer. So what did the Midrash do over here? At the beginning, in our question, we understood the difficulty to be that the putting the blood on the doorpost and doing these lines makes it seem very pagan, makes it seem very like witchcrafty. What does the Midrash do? What is the Midrash saying? No. Again, just like the previous one, it says it's a symbol. It's symbolic. It's symbolic. The blood is symbolic to the Brit Milah, and the lintel and the blood on the lintel and the doorposts symbolizes Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Now, what do we think about this answer?
Well, I think this is highly mysterious. It is very
highly mysterious. I like that phrasing. Highly mysterious. Okay.
Highly mysterious. It is difficult to grasp. If you take a look at it, all this ritual of living in the blood, which is a symbol of life, certainly. Ki Adam hu hanefesh. So it's related only to the males. The women do not have a Brit Milah because the women are already related to the blood with giving birth and with their periods and so on. Mm-hmm. So it's a highly mysterious thing to see how it is how blood is symbolic of what? Of what? Of the purification of the...
No. The blood here is not symbolic of the purification. The blood here is... Yeah, Paul? Yeah?
I just think it's beautiful because I think it connects to Hashem's promise to Avram to take the people out when they go down, and Avram's bris that he had, which was the connection at the... I just think it sort of brings it all together. I don't know whether the people would be able to formulate all of this.
Okay. That question that he's saying now is the same exact question he said before, which we will get to in a moment in the last paragraph that we did not see yet. Okay.
Although at least in this case they know about this.
They know about what?
They know about Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov.
Yes,
and
they do.
About the bris and the promise.
Yes,
so
they do.
They know.
Yes, they do. So first, let's explain the Midrash, and then we'll see what's missing from it. The Midrash is saying something again. It's taking the idea of the previous Midrash and is saying in the same way that the hyssop is symbolic of them. That you are, when Hashem is saying take the hyssop, He's basically saying you're going to take the lowliest thing, and you're going to see how the lowliest thing can be used for something which is great. And this is
correct.
And this is something that in you, the Jewish people in Egypt, you may feel that you are the lowliest. But just like the lowliest plant can be part of something great and out of doing a miracle, you too can be part of something which is miraculous.
A great destiny, yes.
And this Midrash is continuing that same idea, coming and saying that the blood is no longer a physical barrier, some kind of physical magical barrier in front of for some from spiritual forces. Rather, it is a recognition, meaning it is an expression of a covenant, because the Brit Milah, as you say, Paul, is something that they are familiar with. The Brit Milah is a mitzvah that was continued, at least to some degree, if not completely, was continued to be observed. How do we know that the mitzvah of Brit Milah was continued to be observed in Egypt? How do we know that? From Moshe. Because we know that from when Moshe Rabbeinu gave a Brit Milah to his son.
Or didn't, almost didn't.
Fine. Meaning, but it was a mitzvah, it was something that they were familiar with.
Right.
Okay? So coming and saying, well, we already know that there's such a thing as a covenant with God through blood. And we have here something which is beautiful. And by the way, we read this verse, and in your blood you shall live, in your blood you shall live. When do we say this verse? Anyone recognize it?
Seder?
We say it at Leila Seder, yes. We said it at Leila Seder. And you have here, and I'm going a little bit off topic, but I can't help myself. This is a little bit off topic. You have here this beautiful, almost convergence of the Brit Milah. It's almost like saying the Passover sacrifice, the drawing of the blood of the Passover sacrifice is the national equivalent of an individual Brit Milah. There's the Brit Milah, the drawing of the blood of the individual through Brit Milah, and the same thing is happening on the national level with the drawing of the blood over here. Quite literally, drawing of the blood over here. And it is no longer a magical barrier. Rather, it is in Avram's merit. The angel, sees, or it doesn't really see. It's no longer that's what it's about, right? And in their merit, he saw the blood and did not permit the destroyer, because this is a place which has now just expressed a covenant with God. It turned something which it initially, both in the verse and in the Midrash, looked magical, inexplicable, and turned it into something which, on the one hand, sounds very nice. But the other problem is, this all sounds very nice after the fact. But did the Jewish people at the time, could this have meant any of this to them? Could they have grasped this? Could this have meant anything to them? And for that point, I think we need to see the second paragraph. And I think this will might help us understand it, and also I think give us an important understanding about the world of Midrash, and to see that it is not monolithic at all.
Can I ask a quick question before we go there?
Yes.
So the whole obsession with blood sacrifices and any type of sacrifice is obviously to us.
Wait, Oleg. Wait, can you, Oleg? Can you go back 2 sentences? You got cut off. I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Can you hear now?
Not so well.
We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, now I can hear you.
Waking up a little.
Okay. So what I'm saying is, later on, when Jews are told how to sacrifice animals, when to draw blood, whatever, it is you get specific instructions what to do with the animal. You have to burn it, you have to eat it, and within. So here it almost feels like such a tremendous waste. You have to go and slaughter so many animals, and there's no indication of what to do. So we're still on that front where the blood is still part of the pagan tradition. It doesn't matter what happens with the corpse. You know what I mean?
Okay. So, well, if we look at the verses, we'll see there are other things. I hear what you're saying. You're saying that over here the focus of it seems to be the blood. I wouldn't disagree. I don't think the Midrash disagrees either. You're saying that later on, when we get to the korbanot, the official sacrifices, there's so many different details that seem to almost like draw them away from the focus of the blood. Whereas over here, the blood seems to be at the very center, the very essence. I'm not disagreeing. I think the Midrash doesn't disagree either. The Midrash says the blood is a very big deal, but it says this blood is not magical blood. It's not activating some forces. This blood is blood which is supposed to make them, supposed to remind them of their forefathers. It's supposed to remind them of the covenant of blood of the Brit Milah, of the circumcision. That's what the Midrash is doing. And the Midrash is taking it away from the pshat, which seems to be almost a very pagan style thing. And the first Midrash did so as well. The last 2 Midrashim that we saw are taking it, are removing it from the pshat, from what the most literal understanding of the verses, and says no, it's actually symbolic, even though it does not. The Midrash is reading something into the verses that in those verses themselves doesn't seem to be there. Okay. Now let's look at the second paragraph. So I'm not disagreeing with you, Oleg. I'm just saying the Midrash is taking it into a more mellow direction, saying this is symbolic, and this expresses, and this is supposed to cause an understanding and okay. Let's go to the second paragraph. Draw forth and take for yourselves sheep for your families and slaughter the Passover. That is what is said. All who worship images will be ashamed. When Hashem told Moshe to slaughter the Passover, Moshe said to him, this is in the Master of the world, this thing, how can I do it? Do you not know that sheep are the god of Egypt? As it says, and this is a quote, will we sacrifice the deity of the Egyptians before their eyes, and they will not stone us? The Holy One, blessed be He, said to him, look at this is amazing. Upon your life, Israel will not leave here until they slaughter the deity of Egypt in front of their eyes, that I will declare to them that their deity is nothing. Look at that phrasing. Israel will not leave. They cannot leave. It is not they will not leave here until they slaughter the deity of Egypt in front of their eyes.
Precondition.
Yes, but it's not just, what is the precondition? Meaning, although it is not said explicitly in the Midrash, it is quite clear. I think it's very obvious. Why is, according to the words the Midrash puts in Hashem's mouth? Okay? Remember, we've said at the very first class on Midrash, Midrash is not trying to explain to you necessarily what the verses are saying. The Midrash many times, most of the time, many times, is trying to read into the Midrash, into the Psukim, what is not there, but something which helps to understand the verses better, or to complete something that the verses do not say. The Midrash is not simply trying to explain what the verses are saying, but it's trying to give us an understanding of what is standing behind the verses, what is lying underneath them, what the rationale is, what the purpose is, what the context is. Okay? It's a very important understanding of what Midrash is trying to do and what it is not trying to do, at least sometimes. So look at the phrasing of what the Midrash is saying, that God is saying here, or lies beneath it. Israel will not leave here until they slaughter the deity of Egypt in front of their eyes. What?
Does this say? Okay.
Wait, just 1 second. Sorry. What seems to be the purpose of because this is the first verse. Draw forth and take for yourselves sheep for your families and slaughter the Passover. Why? Why?
Well, it is meant to say that the purpose of the Jewish nation is to destroy any other belief, any other deity.
I'm not sure. I don't think I'm not sure that this is a theological process. Because look at Moshe's question. And by the way, Moshe's question is in the verse. Will we sacrifice the deity of the Egyptians before their eyes and they will not stone us? And Hashem says, yes, exactly. Meaning, yes, you cannot leave Egypt. You cannot leave slavery until what happens? Until you believe that you can slaughter the deity of Egypt. And what will happen? Nothing.
It's emunah. Is it not?
It's not, I think it's more than emunah. It's bravery.
Right, but belief
What
that
is
Hashem
what
will...
I'm saying is bravery. We are meant
Wait.
to sustain our belief.
But yeah, I see where you're trying to take it. I don't see here anything though that's talking about the destiny of the Jewish people. I think it's talking about the process. This is not something aimed. I'm not sure to what degree this is aimed at the rest of the world. I think this is the process that they need to go through, which is why also it connects so beautifully to the Midrash about the hyssop. You, the lowly, will experience what it is to take something lowly and do something great with it. And you will go through a process. It is actually connected to some degree to what we said last week, that so much of the focus of the relationship, our relationship with Hashem, or the observance, is ultimately meant or aimed back at ourselves, at transformation, at creating a certain type of personality, or a certain psychological state, or even an emotional state, or a theological state of being, and all these three midrashim. But it starts from, now, I want to say something important, because Paul, you asked twice, but they can't possibly have known about, the hyssop, and I would say sometimes the physical actions Just like when they were to take the god of Egypt and slaughter it, this would have unquestionably a powerful impact on them. Some of them more so than others. Maybe some of them, do all of them know, every single one of them know that the sheep is one of the many deities of the Egyptians? Maybe yes, maybe no, I don't know. But there's no question that that this Midrash and the verse is about taking the sheep is seen as something that is going to have a powerful impact on them. As the Midrash says, upon your life, he says to Moshe, upon your life, Israel will not leave here until they slaughter the deity of Egypt. They cannot leave without this. They cannot become free. They cannot become free of their bondage without this act of rebellion, which is in the verses is stated as such. We will do that. We will kill their deity without them, and they will not stone us. Yes. This act of rebellion is something, whether you understand it or not, whether you're a theologian that understands what a sheep means to Egypt or not, this will have an impact on you. This will free you. This will transform you into a nation that now can leave Egypt. You cannot leave Egypt without it. Why not? Can't Hashem take them out as they are? No. They cannot become free without this. And using that logic, you know what? Whether they understand the significance of a hyssop or not, actions impact a personality. If you take the time to study it and think about it, then you will have the advantage of also having the rationale of it. But taking something lowly, going to the wall and ripping off shrubs, and using them in the process of saving the Jewish people, has an impact. And one day, when you are given the mitzvah of mitzorah and red heifer, you might even connect the dots and say, look at that. We were like a dead person. We were like a mitzorah. And you connect the dots to something that at first when you see it, you don't understand it. And as you get the bigger picture of Torah and mitzvah, suddenly the dots connect and there's a message. But it doesn't take away from the fact that the actions and the performance of these mitzvot, they impact the personality. Sometimes they might even awaken consciousness towards specific things. So say, look, drawing of blood, we're doing a commandment. Yes, we have another commandment like that. The blood that is drawn on a baby on the 8th day, which creates a covenant and brings a baby into the covenant of the Hebrews with their God. And wow, the entire Jewish people, every home needs to do the same thing. This connects us to our tradition. There are very few traditions that the Jewish people had. Brit Milah was one of the very few, probably the only positive mitzvah observance that they even had at the time. And it connects to it very logically. And the last thing I want to say. So what do we do with the first Midrash? The first Midrash made our question worse. The first Midrash is exactly the opposite. The first Midrash takes a difficulty of the pagan orientation of the verses and intensifies it. The other three Midrashim mellow it. Symbolic, psychosomatic, etc. The first one comes and makes it even worse. And here's what I would come and say, that Midrash is not monolithic. Midrash is not all the same, not at all. You have styles within Midrash. And you do have within Jewish tradition, it's not so much a direction that I personally identify with so much, but there is unquestionably an element within Jewish tradition that does look at mitzvot and does look at observances as something which is more technical and not always symbolic, psychosomatic, has an impact that can be traced. Because you know what? Not every mitzvah, not every observance can we trace it and can we understand how it impacts us, whether that is the real reason or not the real reason. And this Midrash comes and says, you know what? No. There could also be we could also understand it as just, it works. Things work even if we don't understand them. It's a direction that I connect to much less. I connect a lot more to the literature that goes and tries to understand how this connects to the bigger picture. Like with a hyssop. Look at the bigger picture. We find it other places. What's common? What's a common thread? And there definitely are. There are Jews who observe in a way which is more ritualistic, pure ritualistic, and less with a concept of understanding and how it affects us and what it builds within us. And even though, again, I connect to it less, it is definitely a voice within our tradition. And there are people who have a strong leaning towards the illogical aspect of observance. And it is something that has its legitimacy. And it's possible that for some people that is something that works better for them. And the need to continuously, the attempt to find rationale behind all these things, to them sometimes sounds a stretch, sounds apologetic. And sometimes I don't want to understand it. I have difficulty with it. But that voice, it exists. For some people, it seems to work. But I would come and say, even that one Midrash doesn't seem to work. Its logic is faulty because the analogy, as we said, doesn't really work. So I think that direction is more of slightly more of a childish way of looking at observance, one that is not able, doesn't feel the need to look for the real reason, and is willing to do things just because we're told. But I think it is appropriate for a lower level of observance, and the rest of Midrash, which I think is much more central. I think is the one which I connect to more, and I think is more central and more common and a more mature way of observance. But Midrash is monolithic. Observance is not monolithic, and there are contradicting ways of looking at observance, and enough room for different approaches.
Beautiful.
Okay, I apologize that we went a little extra today. I tried to squish a little bit too much in there. But okay. Have a good week, everyone.